All right, the final official visit weekend of June 2024 was a successful one. Pitt landed 4 commitments that we know of. 5 Panther-Lair.com commitment tweets went out. 4 at least have been identified, and they're 4 from the weekend. A couple of skill guys, linebacker, offensive lineman, good haul from the weekend. And it's bringing the recruiting class to an interesting position as the end of June approaches. And there's more commitments on the way. More guys are announcing over the next week or two, and some of them will probably be committing to Pitt. And so we'll obviously talk about that as it happens. But in the meantime, we got 4 new commitments to discuss. So let's recap the final official visit weekend of June, what Pitt landed and where they're at with commitments and recruits, and what it all means, right? Here to get your week started on the Morning Pitt. YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Yeah, what it all means. Let's talk about what it all means, what the recruits mean, what the commitments mean, what Pitt landed, who Pitt landed, what it means for their recruiting class, which now stands at 17 announced commitments. Going to be 18 once this 5th commitment that came in yesterday gets announced, but 4 announced over the weekend, 4 guys who took official visits, and we had all the coverage right here at Panther-Lair.com is the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Get all your Pitt sports news and info and coverage that you can possibly handle, plus interaction with other Pitt fans all day, every day on the message boards. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com is the place to get all of the interaction and conversation you could possibly hope for. And the message boards at Panther-Lair.com, and where we were dropping a lot of news and info. Jim was really running with it. Jim Hammett did a lot of the covers this weekend and did a great job with it. And I think if you were following along the message boards, you had a pretty good idea of where everything stood. As each new commitment came in, you had a pretty good idea of who it was and kind of what that meant and who we were keeping an eye out for. You see a lot of headlines up there on the side, breaking down all the new commitments, and we'll talk about them all right here on the Morning Pitt. You know, that's what we do. We talk a little bit of Pitt sports to get your day started at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So like this video and subscribe, and then you will never miss any of our Pitt video content. youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. All right, a bunch of guys to talk about here. 4 new commitments, and it starts with, I don't know if it starts with, but the guy we're going to talk about first is a running back. Sinquin Smith, running back from Roswell, Georgia. He's about 5'9", 165. We'll list him out on Rivals, give or take an inch or a pound here or there. But he's not a big guy, but he's an impressive guy. And he's a playmaker, and he makes a lot of plays. Made a lot of plays for his school, Roswell, this year. He was playing sort of behind or with another talented skill player who I think is going to USF. So Sinquin Smith will be the number 1 guy for Roswell this fall, and I think his numbers will be even more impressive than they already were, and they were pretty impressive this past season. Carried the ball 24 times for 285 yards and 4 touchdowns. You can do the math a little bit on that. 24 carries, 285 yards. That's 11.9 yards per carry. They handed him the ball 24 times, and he averaged about 12 yards every time they did that. He also caught 32 passes for 420 yards. And 8 touchdowns, finished with more than 1,500 all-purpose yards, scored 17 touchdowns. He had 8 receiving touchdowns, 4 rushing touchdowns, 4 punt return touchdowns, and 1 kick return touchdown. You like seeing that variety of touchdowns, I think. You know what I mean? Like, when we talk about stats with high school guys, if your school gets a commitment from a guy, like, we know high school stats don't always translate, but you still want to see a guy who puts up big numbers. You know, you don't want to have to play the game too often where you're saying, well, he didn't have huge numbers, but he was playing behind this guy, or he was doing this with that guy, or they were splitting this or doing that. And once he gets into this system, his numbers are going to blow up. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes it doesn't. You'd like to see a guy in high school put up big numbers. And I think one thing I really like to see is when you get these guys who score touchdowns 3, 4, 5 different ways. You know, you want them to score the rushing and receiving touchdowns, obviously, but you'd like to see some return touchdowns. You'd like to see those kick return, punt return, interception return touchdowns. The punt returning kicker, like pick sixes are a little bit different. That's sort of a chaos situation. You're just trying to navigate. You're trying to find your way through a bunch of bodies going everywhere. There's basically 21 other guys flailing about on the field, and you're trying to sneak your way through them to get to the end zone. Punt returns and kick returns are a little different, though, because it's very sort of specific, and everybody has their eyes on you, like the other team. All 11 guys have their eyes on you. They're watching you. The ball was kicked to you. They know you're the one that's going to run it. It's not even, a kick return is a little bit more sort of organized. There's a structure. Punt return is just the ball is punted and all anyone is looking at is you, right, as the punt returner. Even like if you're playing offense, right, you're a wide receiver, you run a route, or even a running back, you take a handoff, there's at least a little bit of time where the defenders are looking at the offensive player they're covering, where they're not looking at you. On a punt return, they're all looking at you. And Sinquin Smith turned 4 of those into touchdowns. That's a lot of punt return touchdowns. A lot of punt return touchdowns. And, I think you can look back at like Quadri Henderson's big year at Pitt in 2016. He scored a lot more kick return touchdowns than punt return touchdowns. I think punt return touchdowns are harder to pull off. You have maybe sort of a shorter line of defense to get through. Like if you can break through one wave, you're going to be gone. But that wave is getting to you much sooner. You have to get through them much quicker than on a kick return where you're going to go at it with a full head of steam. And so I think punt returns are more difficult. I think you have to be more elusive. I think you have to be able to find the hole. Your vision has to be better. And your burst and explosion, you have to be able to find the hole and go. And Sinquin Smith did it 4 times for his school last year, which I think is a lot. So he ends up with 17 total touchdowns. I think he led his team or tied for his team lead in total touchdowns. You watch his film and look, I'm not going to pretend that this wasn't the case, but there was a lot of bad tackling in his film. There's no question about it. There's some bad tackling. He's not really breaking tackles. He breaks some, but he's mostly just taking advantage of just bad tackles, arm tackles, guys with no leverage, guys that aren't wrapping up, guys that look at a ball carrier who's 5'9", 170, and just think it's not going to be much to get him down. And maybe it's a little bit tougher than they expected. I'm still going to put that more on the defense's like poor play than on Sinquin Smith breaking the tackle. But here's the ticket, okay? Here's the trick. And this is something we're probably going to say a lot about the offensive guys in this class. We're going to say it about both guys today. The guys who committed over the weekend, we're going to say about the other guys who committed, about the guys on the roster right now. And we'll probably say it a lot this week on some other episodes I'm already thinking about doing. And we'll say it a lot, probably throughout the summer and the fall. Is that if you can get them in space, if you can find a way to get them the ball in space, they can make something happen. And I think that's the case with Sinquin Smith. It might be a bad tackle, but once that bad tackle is missed, he can take off. He can really make you pay for it. Now, can he make a man miss? Like, can he actually dodge the tackle and not just take advantage of a poor effort? We'll see. I don't know if you saw a ton of that happening on his high school film, and I think it would be even more difficult for that to happen at the ACC level, but when a tackle was missed, either by him forcing it or by a poor effort by the defense, Sinquin Smith was gone. And here again, you're seeing that same thing we've talked about with some of the other commitments, with some of the guys on the roster. Speed. About going. Putting your foot on the gas, and a guy who can really take off and run away. And maybe it's not the worst idea to build your offense or a significant portion of your offense with guys who can hit home runs. Okay, so you broke a tackle or you made a guy miss or there was a bad tackle. Are you going to get 7 yards or 70? Are you going to get 5 yards or 55 yards? Like, give me the guy who can get 55 yards. Now, there's some downsides to that. If it's smaller guys, you're less likely to break some of those tackles to get a couple extra yards. You need the 3s and the 4s and the 5s every now and then, but you also need the 60s and the 70s. And I think Sinquin Smith, like a number of other guys in this recruiting class and on the roster, looks like a 60 or 70 guy. Georgia Tech, Kansas, and Kansas State also offered him in terms of power conference schools. He took an official visit to Georgia Tech. He had scheduled one to Kansas, but he canceled that That Kansas visit was supposed to happen last weekend, the weekend before the Pitt visit. He canceled the Kansas visit seemingly because he knew he wanted to go to Pitt. And so it was just sort of a formality to take the official visit and lock things up with the Panthers. So that's one commitment in. Really their first sort of true running back, although I think there's other guys in this class who could play some running back as well. The next guy we'll talk about here is Emanuel Taylor. Manny Taylor plays at Green Run High School in Virginia. He's 6'2", 205, Virginia Beach area. That's 7'5". We list him in the Rivals database as a wide receiver. And last week when I was previewing the official visit weekend, I talked about him as a wide receiver, but Pitt likes him as a linebacker. And you watch the video and like, yeah, not hard to see why. Like Manny Taylor he fits right in with what they've taken the last few years. Like you look and you see Rasheem Biles, you see Jordan Bass, you see Braylon Lovelace. Like, these are the guys. You know what I mean? These are the kinds of guys they've been recruiting. These are the kind of guys they've been bringing in. These are the kind of linebackers they like to have. And he fits right into that mold. First play on Manny Taylor's highlights. All right. So the first screen that pops up says, Emanuel, Manny Taylor, Green Run High School, blah, blah, blah. And his stats, and gives all his defensive stats. And then the first play is an offensive play, where they throw him the ball like 6 yards downfield or something like that, and he turns it into a touchdown for 72 yards. Like 72 yards after the catch. I think the actual touchdown was probably like 78 yards. But it was 72 yards after the catch, and it just reminded me of Jordan Bass. I think on Jordan Bass's highlight film, and again, a linebacker prospect through and through, I think the first clip on Jordan Bass's highlight film was him taking a screen pass and running for a touchdown. Same kind of thing. Like Manny Taylor's right in that mold, and he was super productive in high school. Now, unlike guys like Bass and Biles and Kyle Lewis, he played linebacker more than safety in high school, often plays to the boundary, but he's playing the field side as well. He could play the star at 6'2", 205, almost kind of a Solomon DeShields Bengali Kamara type of build coming out of high school, where could be a star, could grow and keep his speed and athleticism and play to the boundary. At Green Run this past season as a junior, he had 130 tackles, 28 tackles for loss, and 8 sacks. Pretty impressive stats for Manny Taylor to put up. And it's not hard. Like I say, it's not hard to see why the Pitt coaches like him at linebacker in this defense. And again, it's the kind of guy they've been recruiting in this system. And so you put him with Justin Thompson, and I felt like there was another linebacker in the group. Maybe Thompson was it. Yeah, they had a few guys visit. But Justin Thompson from Good Counsel, a 6'3", 225-pound linebacker. I mean, like, I think, like, I'm of the opinion, and some people will probably disagree, and some will agree if they're actually looking at it. I think the linebacker recruiting at Pitt has been really good for the last few years. I think they've done really, really well. And I think they're just continuing it right now. I think at some point they really dialed in on the kinds of players they wanted to play linebacker in this defense, and they've been finding them. And they've been doing a really, really good job at finding them. And I think Manny Taylor looks like another one. But he's not, as in the Rivals database we have him as a wide receiver. He's not a wide receiver. He's going to be a linebacker. But this next guy is going to be a wide receiver, and it's Khalil Sterling, 5'10", 175-pound wide receiver prospect at Miami Central, obviously in Miami, Florida. He had a good offer sheet. He had the best offer sheet of any of the guys who committed this weekend. Arizona State, Arkansas, Indiana, Oregon, SMU, West Virginia. Huge stat line. 29 catches, doesn't sound like a lot, but he turned it into 650 yards and 8 touchdowns, 22.4 yards per catch, and he tied for his team lead in touchdowns. And I'm watching his film, and all I can think is just sort of paraphrasing Avon Barksdale. He's just a playmaker, I suppose. I mean, that's just what it comes down to. And like, you watch the film, and you can get the sense that, like, he knows it, that he's just a playmaker. His team knows it. His coaches know it. The opponents know it. They know, like, Khalil Sterling, this guy makes plays. Like it's almost ridiculous that they only threw him the ball 29 times. Miami Central, talented team. They want to spread the ball around, fine, but he needed a lot more catches than that because he makes things happen. And again, you go almost 30 receptions and you're still averaging more than 20 yards per catch. And he's doing it every which way. First play in his highlight film, he's just beating guys down the field on like a post route. It just pure speed, just off the line. I'm running past you. They play off on him all the time, off coverage, because they're not going to be. He's too fast to get your hands on, and he's going to run past you if you try and play him too tight. And so they're playing off coverage all the time, and he's still running past guys, or he's using double moves, or he's running quick stop routes. I mean, like, got a lot of routes at his disposal. He's able to run. He's able to run past guys. Speed again. Get the ball to a guy like Khalil Sterling in space, and it's over. It's over. You just got to get it to him in space. And if you can have that well-timed, that well-designed play that gets him one-on-one running out of safety, and he's taken off on a post route, and he gets that inside step, I mean, he's gone, and it's a touchdown if you hit him in stride. Like, hit him in stride because you're going to get a lot of touchdowns out of it. Really impressive playmaker. Again, we'll probably do a whole episode on this later this week. I'm pretty impressed with the skill guys they brought in. They're not very tall. None of them is very tall. And we'll spend a lot of time, probably more than we need to, talking about that. But like in terms of talent, like if they wanted to get fast receivers, if they wanted to add speed to this roster, I mean, like, mission accomplished. You know what I mean? When you talk about Khalil Sterling, you talk about Sinquin Smith, you talk about Demarion Folks, you talk about Ja'Karian Turner, you talk about Bryce Yates, you talk about Tony Kinsler. I mean, like, skill position-wise, and not one of them is taller than like 5'11", maybe. We'll list them. We'll graciously list them at 5'11", but I mean, they're not big guys. But they're going to beat you and me in a race. And probably anybody listening to this podcast. There's nobody listening to this podcast or watching this video who will beat any of those Pitt skill position commits in a race. I'm almost guaranteeing that. It's a weird guarantee to make, but, it just came to me. No, it's a lot of speed. And it's impressive to watch. And Sterling might be the best out of all of them. I thought Ja'Karian Turner was. I liked his film the best. I mean, Khalil Sterling is a playmaker. He's just a playmaker, I suppose. All right, and then the fourth guy who committed, I don't know if this went in this order or not, but the fourth guy we're going to talk about here is Torian Chester. He's an offensive lineman from Albany, Georgia. He's listed at 6'5", 320. I think he'll be a guard. The thing here is, it's been clear that Pitt wants to get 4 offensive linemen in this class. They want 2 guards and 2 tackles. They've got Akram El-Nagmi as a tackle coming from England. They've got Shep Turk as a guard coming from Thomas Jefferson. I think they want 1 more guard and 1 more tackle, and I think Chester fills that guard spot. Listed at 6'5", might be a little bit shorter than that. He's a big boy, though, at 320 pounds. He had 14 offers, Pitt being one of them, so he picked Pitt over 13 other schools. None of the others were power conference schools, and that's just what it is. And, you can look, Akram El-Nagmi had, I think, Virginia. Shep Turk, forget what his offer sheet ended up being. If his Rivals profile page would ever open, I could tell you what his offer sheet ended up being, but fortunately, Rivals is a little bit slow to load right now. But, I mean, look, you're not going to find a lot of great offer sheets, and there's no. Yeah, I mean, we can complain about Rivals ratings and things like that. This guy's not rated this guy's not rated that, or this guy should be rated this, or this guy should be rated that. But the reality is the offer sheets are what they are, and Torian Chester didn't have any other power conference offers. Akram El-Nagmi had 1 other power conference offer. I think Shep Turk only. If he had anything, he probably had like West Virginia or something like that. Rivals is just not going to load for me right now to tell me the answers to the questions they have. But you get the point. They're not highly recruited offensive line prospects. there's always going to be some amount of projection. There's always going to be some amount of development and evaluation and all of that when it comes to the offensive line. And Pitt is certainly betting on that. Jeremy Darveau, Cade Bell, the offensive staff, they're betting on their abilities to develop these offensive linemen. And whether they, if they do, then they'll have some good linemen for the future. And if they don't, they won't. And they'll have to go to the transfer portal more and more, which is not a non-viable approach. But, I mean, you'd like to be able to develop your guys from within, particularly along the offensive line, although there's something to be said for the fact that you could spend 3 years developing them, they play one good year, or spend 2 years developing them, they play one good year in their third year, and then they transfer somewhere else for the final year or two. So, is it worth the effort? Yes, because you at least got that one good year, but, it's that's one of those things. Either way, Torian Chester, third offensive lineman to commit to Pitt in this class. They need one more. They need a tackle. I think they'll get one probably by the end of the month would be my expectation, probably from the official visits. We'll see what comes out of that, and we'll certainly have lots of coverage of it at Panther-Lair.com. Just like we had of this past official visit weekend. 7 visitors came in, 4 of them committed, and we'll see what happens from here. Make sure you stay tuned to Panther-Lair.com for all the latest Pitt sports coverage. They've got 17 commitments, 18 total, 17 of which have been announced. We'll keep you posted on that final that final commitment announcement, and then everything going on as Pitt moves toward the dead period in the month of July. So it's been an interesting month, and we'll certainly have a big recap of June heading forward. Probably do that this week. We'll talk about got a lot of things I want to talk about this week. We got a lot of topics, some things I didn't get to last week that I wanted to talk about, some things I want to talk about this week. A lot of it will be recruiting based, and then of course a lot will be position and team based as well as we move through the summer and get closer and closer to training camp. So like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, to never miss any of our Pitt video content, and check out the website Panther-Lair.com. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Hope you had a great weekend. Hope your Monday goes well, and we will catch up with you tomorrow for the Morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.